All right, everyone. I wanted to share with you some of the books I've been researching. This is a really great book. It's by Charles Sydnor. It's called American Revolutionaries in the Making: Political Practices in Washington's Virginia. It was originally published in the 1950s under the title of Gentlemen Freeholders. This is the book. My book has some damage. It's old. But this is a really great book if you want to understand the election process in the colony of Virginia before Revolution, how candidates ran for office, that they did not go door to door knocking on doors asking for your vote, that their reputation preceded them, and that, of course, no one gets elected without without treating the voters. And what I mean by treating is offering them free food and free liquor, free rum to be specific, but not just rum, but Madeira and lots of other wines and spirits. And even at the location of the voting, which was the county courthouses, and it also talks about the powers that the county courts, the justices in the county courts had over elections, especially because the sheriff, who was one of the gentlemen justices, would step down usually for a 2-year term to serve as sheriff, and the sheriff would run the elections. The candidates are brought into the courtroom, or if it's a nice day, out onto the courtroom steps, or I'm sorry, the courthouse steps in their county. And the candidates are there. Each candidate has a clerk who records the votes, and the sheriff would then call the voters up one at a time, and they would orally vote for which candidate they wanted to have elected. And it was an oral vote so that everyone that was in attendance could keep track of the vote, so that way you know that there was no way for really voter tampering. But also showed the power of the sheriffs, that sheriffs could open and close the polls at any time. And there's a case where the House of Burgesses Committee of Elections and Privileges they were called in to investigate an instance where a sheriff, some voters went to go get some more voters, and the sheriff, deciding that these were going to vote against the candidate that the sheriff wanted, actually closed the polls before those men came back with their friends to vote. So there was no set time for voting, like we have today, where the polls open at 6 or 7 in the morning and close at 7 or 8 o'clock at night. There's also a time where the freeholders didn't like the way an election was going, and they actually attacked the sheriff. And that they describe this in one of the descriptions. They actually talk about throwing the sheriff on top of the table where the candidates were sitting, and the table breaking underneath the sheriff. And of course, they did call for another election. But it just talks about the election process and the power that the sheriff and the county courts had, and the fact that a lot of these gentlemen who run for office did serve on the county courts. The county courts are made up of the gentry class, who are the ones who are running. Now, in order to sit as a justice on the court, you received no salary, but you didn't have to have any education in the law. You could be an amateur at law. That would be a bonus. They used their wisdom and their common sense to solve their problems or issues in court. So again, a really good book. Uh, to be elected into office was not a lucrative position like it is today. To serve in office, you did not get paid for your time in office. You got travel expenses covered. You got a stipend for traveling, but you did not earn a salary while sitting in the House of Burgess as an elected official. Serving as a public servant or being elected into public office was not a way to get wealthy. The freeholders are what we call the voters. And just to be clear, not every white person is voting. In order to vote, in order to hold office, in order to sit as a justice, you had to be a white man over the age of 21, Protestant, and property owning. So you had to meet every single one of those qualifications in order to vote, to hold office, to serve in government, to sit on a jury. You had to meet all of those qualifications. And it's just a really good a book if you're interested in seeing how things used to work. And some of the interesting stories, you could vote in every county in which you owned property. So if you owned property in several different counties, you could vote in several different counties. Patrick Henry, for instance, when he's elected, he lives in Hanover County, but he knows he can't defeat the person sitting in office in Hanover County. So he actually runs for office where he owns property, which is in Louisa County, and becomes the representative of Louisa County. Though he's not a resident there, he owns property there. So this is a good book. If you're interested, it's a quick read. I don't read very fast. It's about 126 pages, I think. Yeah, about 126 pages. I read this book in one day. So if I can read a book in one day, and I'm a slow reader, some of you can read this in half a day, in a couple hours. So it's an easy read. There's a lot of really good information, and I encourage you, if you're interested in government and politics in the 18th century and what formed the way that the founders were groomed for public office, and the experiences that helped them prepare for revolution, then this is a really good book to have on hand and to read. So that's my book report. Charles Sydnor, American Revolutionaries in the Making. Have a good night.